I have not been out of the house in like a month, with the exception of picking up this truck from the shop last week. Or maybe that was like a few days ago, I don't know. Anyways, I haven't done one of these in a really long time. Correction, actually. I don't think I've ever done one, really. I think that was primarily an alt thing, because a lot of those alts, a lot of the parts found validation and acknowledgement in social media. And so for a while, many parts of me kind of relied on that, like sharing things publicly, because it like validated them as people, or validated for what they're feeling, or they just felt seen and heard doing that. And so it was actually like really healing for me. But I know that it has been a long time since I or anybody has made any posts about anything in particular that my channel has typically been about, which is the mental health DID journey. And there's a lot of things that go along with that. I am leery to say a whole bunch, just because you know how like mental health is, and like healing and the therapy journey in general. You can feel like you're like in a good place, and you get to a certain spot where you've healed something and you've overcome something, and then you never know what could happen that might kind of make that feel like make that take a few steps back. And so I'm kind of like hesitant to say anything or share anything, but I am comfortable sharing it with that being known, that what I'm about to talk about, I'm not in any way like claiming that I am healed and I'm just 100% better now. I don't know what could happen down the road and what might change. But long story short, the last few months have been leading up to a lot of major breakthroughs, mental health wise, and just personally, and how I communicate with my husband, my friends, my kids. And a few weeks ago, I had an incident that I can't describe as anything other than integration. I don't know why I have a pit in my stomach right now. I think because for the last few weeks, I've been kind of trying to just like play it safe. Well, I'm gonna wait for the other shoe to drop. I feel really good right now, but we're gonna wait I know that the minute I say something, I'll wake up the next morning and 3 new alts will come out, and then I'm gonna be embarrassed. And so I've kind of been like waiting on that. I've kind of been banking on that. And I don't think that's fair to myself, because I've never felt more whole. I can go into the details of what the whole incident entailed, but that's like a whole other thing it's a whole other set of details in a whole other video series, really. But was it October or November? Last fall, what is this? Oh, this sweatshirt's dirty. Oops, my kid's got chocolate fingers on it. Last fall, my littles integrated. So basically, I have not had any littles come out or be individual since then. And I haven't talked about that at all either. But there was a distinct moment where there was an incident, and it was all of the littles sucking up into one, and then in a way like going to bed, or like calming down and just settling into me, adult me. Basically, my inner child just decided she was comfortable enough to finally rest and be content, which was a big deal. And that was kind of the start of it. This has been like a process that has been building and building and building for the last few months, and that's kind of why I've been more quiet on here, because I've just been trying to really understand what is going on. Not to mention, I think that specific parts or alts were the ones that kind of ran my social media the most and reached out in that way. It's interesting how, as I've found healing, I've been able to do more of that validation for myself, rather than having to share it and get the external feedback, which there's nothing wrong with that, because I think that everyone should talk about, I think it's a part of the journey, expressing outwardly certain things and getting that outward validation. But the process for me the last few months has been that I haven't needed that, and I've been able to kind of reinforce a lot of things myself and with the people close to me. I don't know why I feel nervous. Not nervous bad, I'm just like excited. I think this is something, I know this is something that I have worked really, really, really hard on for 6 years in therapy. And I turned 29 this year. I'm closing out my 20s. And it also feels like I'm closing out a lot of the things that have been holding me back. And so that's exciting and emotional and also kind of weird to say out loud because I've been reaffirming it for myself in the last few weeks in my head, but it's different, I think, to really like document it this way. I can see why the alts would do it because it does feel really different. Last fall, after the littles settled down, the littles' nervous system settled down and they were able to relax. A lot of things moved very quickly to where I think it was a lot of clusters of alts that one alt would have a few alts or a few parts. A lot of them, the main adult alts, were also very fragmented and had their own personas, alters, in a sense. And over the last few months, a lot of those have clustered up and just became one. Whitney and her little group over here, it wasn't a group of 5 or 6 anymore, it was just Whitney, Olivia, and Lilac, and I can't even think of any of all of them, but a lot of the teenagers, they kind of clustered up and identified as one. And so slowly but surely, a lot of these different groups of the main parts collectively integrated and joined each other to where a few weeks ago, it was so weird. It was like overnight, it was literally overnight. It just sucked up and I suddenly looked in the mirror and I was like, my entire perspective on life was 100% different than it was 20 minutes before. This whole, just this like, this like psyche. I was gonna say psychic, but that was not the right word. This whole event in my head psychologically just like happened. And it changed my outlook on everything, my entire life. And I know exactly what did it, the shift in perspective that did it. And I feel kind of shy to say it out loud because I feel like it's something that I struggled with for so long and carried with myself and carried inside for so long that it's a big deal to me. It was a big deal to all of my being, all of these different parts. It was what held us back from healing. But I feel like when I say it out loud, other people are going to be like, that's really obvious. It took you that long to figure it out. Why is that a big deal? You could have just gotten over it. I feel kind of shy about that, but I do want to share it. The perspective that completely shifted for me was that as a lot of these these parts were kind of joining each other and solidifying as little groups turning into one, it kind of knocked out a lot of the little different clusters of alts that were like the outliers in a way, where they were farther away from my core self. They were more fragmented. However, what was left then was there was 2 primary parts that were the biggest struggles, they had the biggest struggles, the biggest things and traumas and things to overcome. And what's funny, actually, no, not even the biggest traumas. They had the biggest just baggage in all ways. And not even trauma related, just baggage that they carried because they were them. They are who I would have looked back on, or if I watch videos on all my social medias or anything like that, where I would have always seen them as like the embarrassing ones maybe, or the problem. My family for sure would probably view these moods of mine as not me, or out there, or ungodly, or in Brandon's instance, transgender. And I don't say that because I'm placing judgment on that. I'm saying that because of my upbringing. Those 2 parts were Brandon and London. Brandon being a male, which there was other males in the systems. It's interesting that Brandon had the hardest time. Brandon was the closest to my core self, was the closest male to Krista's core self. And I say Krista's in quotes because I'm changing my legal name. It's not that Krista doesn't exist, it's that the name Krista is not a thing for me anymore. Brandon, essentially the best way I could describe it, is Krista, but just male presenting. I can get into that in another video because that's also loaded. But I think that it has to do with, sounds so stupid. I feel so stupid and embarrassed to even bring it up out loud, but I know that ultimately no one really cares. It has to do with me coming to terms with a lot of aspects about my sexuality and not only being attracted to men, right? Growing up in a very Christian household where that stuff was not encouraged or talked about, and just knowing that that was not accepted or just not something ever to really be addressed, I think essentially what my brain did was covered up that part of me by attaching it to a male identity, because in my head, it's not gay if it's a male, right? This part of me that is interested in women and confused about that and afraid to address it as me, as a wife and a mom. Over the course of my life, my brain kind of associated and attached that male persona to that because that was the loophole, right? That was the way to cope with that. And that's not even taking into account the fact that Brandon was a protector. And if you know anything about DID, that's protector alts and all of that comes along with it. There's a lot to Brandon. But Brandon was the closest to who Krista is. On the other side of that, there was London. And London is really smart, really hardworking, really passionate, really sure of herself, really confident, and at times very quick-tempered, hot-headed, strong-willed, and bitchy, for lack of a better phrase. She can come off very strong, very opinionated, but she's also very sweet and passionate, compassionate, empathetic, but that's kind of muddled down by her very strong energy. I'm sorry, I'm giggling because I feel like I'm just like beating around the bush to get to the point, and I don't know why I'm doing that. I think it's because I know that there's people I haven't talked to in a long time, particularly like family, who I know like keep tabs on my stuff, and that's also partly why I have stopped posting. But as like the final little step for solidifying where I'm at in therapy and like my healing, I do want to make an update about it and address it, because I feel like otherwise I'm doing a disservice to all the work that all the parts had done. It makes it feel like I'm still hiding. But ultimately, the perspective that shifted everything in my life was realizing that the two alts who everyone really viewed as the problem, the ones that were stifled the most and took the most coaxing to come out and be comfortable with themselves when they would front and come out, they were me. They were my core self. But they were my brain's natural way of self-preservation, because I don't want to cry. Because if the parts of me that are the hardest to handle are cast out here as alts, then it's easier to accept that those parts of me that are difficult to understand and accept, that it's easier to say that they are not me. I'm not associating with that. I just in the last few weeks have realized how severely I have ostracized and judged myself for just the basic traits of what make me, me. And over the fall, in finding out that I am autistic, which those two encompass a lot of those traits. London is very hyperactive, very sensitive to things, very blunt, very direct, comes off as empathetic, but she's not. She's very empathetic, and people don't see that. Brandon, now that I got kind of emotional, I'm having a hard time explaining it. Over the discovery of all of this DID and trying to heal it and understand it, there was a common consensus that Krista, the core self, didn't exist. No one knew who she was. And that's because those parts of me that make up me that I couldn't accept, I compartmentalized and cast them away to separate myself from them. And I put them in a box in a room in the back of my head and hoped they would never dig their way out, because I hated them. I knew that people around me didn't like them, which really it's because I had the wrong people around me, right? And when I realized that the DID isn't, I'm trying to think of a visual. Let's say the straw is the core self, and then my fingers around are all the different parts that make up one person, right? When I realized that the DID wasn't the core self being overruled by all of these other different parts that are not the same part of the same person, everything changed. And after that, it was like 3 months to where the rest of all of these parts were sucked up and laid to rest. not laid to rest in a weird way, but like able to relax and be content with themselves and accept themselves. When I realized that my core self wasn't being overrun by alts, my core self was so humiliated and ashamed and embarrassed of herself and of certain traits that she knew were difficult to handle, or that other people didn't like, or that she just didn't like. Throughout the course of my life and the trauma that I've been through, I turned on myself and cast those traits away from me. Because if I don't identify with those, they're not me. But yet in my brain, they still existed, right? They didn't just leave. And over the past few years, that's where, when we have all these different alts coming out, it's my brain just not able to do it anymore. Not able to mask that and hide that anymore. And I think that a big part of that was due to finally having people in my life who saw me for me, or saw those parts as parts of me, and didn't shy away from that, and still loved me for it, and still validated that those are good people, that they have good traits, and that London might be kind of a bitch sometimes, but she's really smart, and she's an amazing career woman, and all of these other things that I tried to hate out of myself. And 16 days ago, the night that I had this like final realization, it's something I had been pondering for a while, but I didn't quite believe it yet. But when I finally like realized it and realized it, I was sitting in the shower, and I don't even remember the video I took, but I remember taking a video of myself in the shower, not like anything weird, but just like of my face, like from here up, because I had a thought that I was like, I have to say it now or I don't want to forget, because with the DID, you never know when you're going to forget, right? And after that, everything was different. And it was when I realized that Brandon and London are two sides of the same coin. And that coin was Krista's core self. The two parts, the two alts that were the most difficult, the strongest willed, the smartest, the bravest, just the most of everything. They were me, desperately trying to run away from them, trying to run away from me. They were me trying to run away from what I didn't like and didn't want to address and accept about me. And the night I was in the shower, and I took this video of just word vomit of a lot of these things I realized. I swear it was like I got out of the shower and I was whole. And I've been leery to talk about it, because there's been other times when I've like thought, oh, I think I'm integrated, I think I've made a breakthrough. And it wasn't really that. It was just like an individual part making a breakthrough. Not to minimize that, but it was different. This is way different. I have not experienced life in the way that I have in the last few weeks. I'm finally able to cognitively and intellectually think about something and also feel emotions about it at the exact same time. And in my entire life, I've never been able to do that. I've been able to have an emotion and feel it in the moment that I'm having it, and not have it come out as a flashback or an episode at another random time. I have been able to remember everything. I have not been losing any time. I haven't had any switches. There hasn't been any moments where I feel blended or dissociated at all. And I'm like really, really, really freaking proud of myself. Over the last few years, I've known that I'm going to legally change my name and get rid of Krista. I wouldn't say it's a traumatic name, because that sounds dramatic, but I've evolved from it. To put it in harsh words, it's a dead name to me. There's been many parts that have came out that have been like, I'm Calliope, and guess what? The entire system agrees that we're going to change your name to that. That's happened so many times. And so I'm aware of how talking about it sounds, and that other people could be like, well, how do you know you're not an alt and you're not doing the exact same thing? And trust me, I just know. It is so different. It's so different. I have never been this present and content ever. With that said, hi, I'm London. I am currently in the process of changing my name legally, and I want to make clear that that is not to erase Krista. Everyone who knows Krista, she's a culmination of all of those parts. She's a culmination of all of those alts, right? And that's me. And that's me finally loving myself and not trying to ostracize these parts that my whole life I wanted to hate out of me and wanted to not address. I'm finally embracing who I am as a woman, and that is someone who is really strong and intelligent very business oriented and entrepreneur, a really shitty housewife. And that's okay. And I'm okay with that because I can make up for it by going to work and working hard. I've always joked, other parts have always joked that me and my husband have opposite gender roles. Which, what is that anymore, right? But growing up in a traditional household, you know what I'm a shit housewife. I'm a shit cook. I'm shit at cleaning. I'm shit at doing laundry. I'm just fucking shit at all of that. But I will climb under the sink and and fix the garbage disposal. I will put together the bedroom set. I will move furniture. I will take my truck to the fucking landfill. I know that socially now the gender thing isn't really a big deal anymore, but for someone who has been held back by a lot of that my whole life, it is. And so that's the only reason why I'm addressing it. And I'm addressing it that way because for people who knew Brandon, that's him. The part of me that I knew wasn't feminine and girly and womanly. That was Brandon. And he's me. But I'm a woman. And I have some of those more masculine traits. I'm a protector. I'm an avenger. I don't fuck with me or someone I love, or we will be getting down in the parking lot. It's funny because I remember distinctly about a year and a half ago, my mom talking to me about, there's one of the girl outs, she's just really mean and scary, and I know she doesn't like me. She's mean. She's just really scary and intimidating. She's like really bitchy. And sometimes I wonder how she would feel now knowing that all of those times she was talking about alts. She was talking to her daughter with judgment about the most purest forms of her. The time that she looked at Brandon when she didn't know it was Brandon and she just thought it was her daughter. She thought it was just Krista. And she says, well, can't you make them go away? If it were me, I would just put my foot down. I wouldn't let these males just take over my body. I would just put my foot down. And it has taken me a lot to overcome those comments and those things and be okay with sitting here right now and being like, hi, I'm London, aka Krista. I am Brandon. I am the one that will wear a backwards hat and wear masculine clothes sometimes because I want to. That doesn't mean I'm a man. And it wouldn't even matter if I was, but that doesn't mean that I am anything other than me sitting here right now. And it doesn't mean that I'm anything any less than whatever your ideal vision of me is. With that, I have never felt so whole. I've never felt so validated within myself as who I am. And I guess for everyone who has watched and kind of understands what I have been through and what a lot of the different parts or alts were like, none of them have went anywhere. I have just been able to look at them as parts of me and love them. And I've been able to genuinely love those parts of me that I have hated my entire life. And that's really exciting for me. I guess with that said, I'm going to end this. This is almost 40 minutes long. I don't even know if I'm going to post this. I probably won't. But regardless, it feels nice to have it somewhere. Hi, I'm Bianca. I'm Alexis. I'm Olivia. I'm Cece. I'm Holly, I'm Brandon, I'm Drake, I'm Samson, I'm Topaz, I'm Scarlet. I am all 93, I think, of the names that I could list off, pull up my phone and list off. But at the end of the day, I am and always will be Krista. I'm just moving on from that part of my life and moving on in a way of embracing it and loving it and letting it be. And in no way forgetting or trying to forget it existed, or trying to pretend it didn't, or trying to leave it behind. I'm acknowledging all of those parts of me as actually parts of my identity, and I'm not trying to hate them out of me, and I love them, and I wouldn't have this scenario any other way, honestly, because the craziness has forced me to be terrified enough to have to understand myself, and that's a journey that I wouldn't trade for anything, honestly. I think that's called healing. I know it's called self-discovery, and I know it's called self-love, and I'm proud of myself, and I love myself, and I'm happy to feel like I'm finally someone worthy of being understood and accepted without having to mask parts of me that I worry other people won't like. or won't agree with. I keep wanting to say it's Britney, bitch, but what would that be for me? I'm trying not to say it because it's like a dad joke that is really bad. It's really bad, but it's London Bridge. It's not Britney, bitch. It's London Bridge. That's so cringe. But that's okay. It's okay to be cringe. I'm not gonna ostracize myself for having a weird sense of humor. Seriously, it's been wild the last few weeks. Just being the way that I am and being okay with it. What? I genuinely, sincerely hope and pray that everyone can experience what this feels like at some point in their life. And I think that's the only reason why if I do end up posting this, I think that's the only reason why I ultimately end up posting it. Is to hopefully validate and encourage someone else who maybe feels the same way but feels embarrassed about it. Not to. We all have our shit. And at the end of the day, the only security you'll ever be able to find that's actually secure is what you find in yourself. No matter who is there for you and who loves you, those are vital pieces. But you have to do the work for yourself. And if you don't, you're not giving yourself what you deserve. You deserve to love yourself. All of the parts of yourself. Even the ones that you judge personally and that you think are not okay. Those are still parts of you. Stop hating yourself. You have to live with you. There has been a lot of processing going on. I don't know how to end this because I'm just content. It's just the weirdest. For the first time in my life, I know I can be overbearing and condescending and really like strong with my words. And for some reason, like talking about this, like I struggle for words. This is the first thing in my life that's got me to sit down and shut the fuck up. And I think that's saying something.